I've done a lot of prep work getting ready for this interview, read both your books, dove into a lot of your other interviews, and I'm excited to get into your health journey. And I
Awesome.
think a good jumping off place is going back to your early 20s when you started to have digestive issues, your energy levels started dipping, and you started to put on extra weight. So take me back to that time and what life was like.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird because, your body changes so much. And now, especially after two kids, like physically, everything is so different. So it's interesting to think back to when I was going through all that. But yeah, it was not fun. Like I'd always been really into health, and it was just something I was fascinated by. My father was a surgeon. And before I stumbled into my wonderful racket that I'm in now, I actually wanted to be a doctor, like my father, and because there's a lot of doctors in my family, so it was just kind of a natural path for me. And I'd always been interested in health. And then, in my early 20s, yeah, I started struggling with a ton of inflammation, digestive stuff. I was doing a lot of I was working with kind of like these woo woo, not kind of Western medical doctors because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me because that was kind of like the early cusp of autoimmunity. Now when people hear about autoimmunity, they're like, oh, we know what that is, like Hashimoto's, having to do with like your thyroid and things like that. And, different kinds of autoimmunity, Lyme's, things like that. Like people are autoimmunity. I'm sure your listeners know this if they listen to you, but it's when your body basically attacks itself. And back then I was dealing with a lot of autoimmunity stuff. And it was really kind of early days where Western medical doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So then I really started healing myself through food. I'd always been, a chef. My mother was a chef. I grew up, with her teaching me in the kitchen, but I never really, when Western medicine was kind of failing me, which there is absolutely time for Western medicine. My father was, as I said, like he was an orthopedic surgeon, so he was very much on that train of thinking. Which is kind of like once you're sick, you then treat it. It's not preventative. Do you know what I mean? Whereas now I think everything's kind of shifting a little bit more preventative. But back then it really wasn't. So I started kind of getting into some woo woo stuff in terms of like, meaning I was studying like leaky gut before anybody really knew what leaky gut was. Or like intestinal permeability, things like that. I was studying when doctors were like, that doesn't exist. Where now it's more kind of on the forefront of what people are talking about in medicine. I actually think a lot of people have more digestive issues than they know, but I think that we just mask it. Me included, I used to do this with different kind of things, but that was one of my main things was I was dealing with a lot of just like inflammation. And what I've learned over the years is that inflammation is really a sign that there is a big problem. And back then I didn't really know that. And I was struggling with my weight and I would go on these crazy crash diets, desperate because, when you're struggling with your weight and you're in the public eye, it makes it more tough. You know what I mean? Because everything is like, even back then, you gain like 5 or 10 pounds. You're like, she's pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, struggling with that in the public eye. It's like, I'm so blessed to have such a wonderful job, but then everything is like public, especially now. Everyone is a paparazzi, everyone has a cell phone. So that was kind of like the beginning of my real deep dive into health was when I couldn't, while I absolutely know there's a place for Western medicine and I grew up in Western medicine, I really tried to research outside of the box and educate myself because my body was like kind of revolting against me. Like it was really rough. And then I started to heal myself through food. Food was a major, major medicine for me. I really started looking at food as medicine.
So, just to make sure I have the story right, did you start with conventional medicine when your health degraded and then went into the quote unquote woo woo stuff? Or did you kind of already had previous experience going more conventional and when In your early 20s, you jumped right into the more alternative.
I started conventional because that was my upbringing. You know what I mean? And I'm from Jersey. I mean, like, there's not a lot of unconventional. My household was super unconventional because my mother was a very eccentric woman. But in terms of medicine, when you were sick, you went to a doctor. You know what I mean? You didn't go to like a chiropractor to like get adjusted or go on, any kind of special herbs or think about healing yourself through food. It was like, oh, you go to a doctor and they put you on some kind of pill. You know what I mean? Uh, so it's antibiotic, whatever it is. But when none of that stuff was working, that's when I really started diving into. And when I say woo woo, I'm joking. I basically just mean not conventional medicine. So I got deep into like Chinese meridian theory and learning about meridians. I was doing deep tracks. Like I was trying every diet. Like I went raw. I went macrobiotic for a year. I went vegan. I did the pH balance diet, where everything I ate was like, low pH, and drank like swamp water. Like I did so many things over the years, and ultimately they all kind of failed me. I honestly got back to real organic, fresh food, real food, and then really started healing myself. That was kind of a game changer for me when I really looked at food as medicine. And my whole philosophy with cooking, and for my family and my kids now, I show my love through food. I mean, again, the kitchen is the heartbeat of the home to me. And, being able to show my love to my friends and my family through food is a huge part of what means, it's my heart. You know what I mean? So figuring out that food is also medicine, it just kind of took my cooking to the next level of not only does it fill me with joy to feed my family and my friends, but it can also be a medicinal value as well, is a pretty big deal.